Good evening, everybody. Keith Angle here for TGI Sports Talk's College Sports Huddle. Mostly our college basketball huddle tonight. We'll dive into some information regarding obviously the NCAA tournament, and March Madness has certainly descended upon us. We'll talk about the first and second round of surprises, disappointments. We'll look at the Sweet 16 and how those games match up and who we predict to win, as I'll kind of regroup after my bracket is a little bit blown up. We'll talk about some coaches on the move. Rick Pitino to St. John's, Ed Cooley from Providence to Georgetown, among the most prominent, but there's some others that we'll take a look at. And maybe we'll take a quick look at the NIT. I don't know. We'll see how it goes tonight. Maybe a little bit of the women's tournament. I've been accused of leaving the women out, so maybe we'll take a quick look at those brackets. And maybe some college football and maybe even some college baseball news. We'll see how it goes. And we welcome all of you tonight. Keep in mind, and all of you watching us on Northeast Streaming Sports, on Let's Talk Sports, we're simulcasting on. You can see us on TGI Sports Talk, obviously. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. If you're watching us live, welcome. Please share your comments. Please feel free to bring up any topics you want to talk about. And if you're watching us later, you can still feel free to comment. I don't know why I've got all these things. Oh, that's me. Okay. All right. So, whoops, got to leave the comments up there. We're going to dive in tonight. We got a lot to talk about. And by the way, real quick, couple of programming notes. As I have felt better, we've gotten back in the interview swing. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. on TGI Sports Talk and Let's Talk Sports, we'll premiere our interview with Kermit Washington, former NBA player with the Lakers, the Clippers, the Celtics, the Trailblazers, a few others. Big star in NCAA basketball, one of only 7 men to average 20 points and 20 rebounds in his career. Has had kind of a star-crossed life, some big highs, big lows. We'll talk about a lot of stuff, including the Oh, man, I was muted. Crap. I hope the whole first part of the show didn't go without being heard. Oh, God. Anyway, we'll open again. We'll do this real quick, guys. We're going to talk NCAA tournament. We'll have to go a little long, maybe, because the first 5 minutes of the show is a silent show. Oh, my bad. My technical difficulties do continue. Thanks. Did it pop off and back on? Do you know, or was it off the whole time? I don't know what time you popped in. Anyway, we'll review the craziness of the first two rounds. We'll look at the Sweet 16. We'll look at surprises and disappointments. We'll talk about the Sweet 16. We'll look at my bracket and how bad it is, and we'll make some picks going forward. Coaches on the move. Rick Pitino on his way to St. John's. Ed Cooley from Providence to Georgetown. Big move there. Some other things to talk about. Other news and notes around college basketball. Maybe we'll talk some NIT. Maybe we'll talk some women's professional basketball. I don't know why this is all highlighted so that I can't read it. That's something new. Maybe some college football notes. Maybe some college baseball. We'll see how that goes. So anyway, I talked about Willis Reed, but I was muted, I think. Willis Reed was a great college basketball player at Grambling, first-round draft pick of the Knicks, I want to say in 1964. Great college career, as I said, at the historically black college, Grambling, and then a great player with the Knicks for many years, 10 years, having to retire prematurely due to many, many injuries. Not the best player maybe on that Knicks team, but the leader of that Knicks team, the heart and soul of that team. And he dies at 80 years old here yesterday. Our condolences, our heartfelt condolences, and our thoughts and prayers are with his family. So rest in peace, Willis Reed. Missed the first 4 minutes. Yeah, I couldn't tell whether I had a little wire come disconnected when I saw it muted. So hopefully it wasn't muted the whole time. If it was, I apologize for anybody that may have hope you didn't pop off because we had no sound. Craziness galore in the tournament, right? Oh my God. The first couple of days were just jam-packed with upsets, close games. We'll go. I want to go region by region. We'll talk about some of the games. We'll take your comments. Guys, any topics you want to talk about, we'll go through the tournament. We'll look at the Sweet 16 here, and we'll see how we got here. So in the South, we're starting the South because that's my upper left, and it's the first I see. Here's the teams that are left. Alabama against San Diego State. That'll be at 6:30. That looks to be Friday night. And you have Creighton against surprising 15 seed Princeton. That game will be at 9 o'clock on Friday. How do we get here in the South? Some crazy stuff going on. I told you West Virginia didn't belong, and I still believe West Virginia didn't belong. Beaten by a mediocre Maryland team. They blew, Jesus, close to a 20-point lead. It was well into double digits, that's for sure. Let me put a new banner up here. Oh, let's see. I still got my Jim Boeheim deal up here. Where is, can you believe I don't have it? Anyway, I am so frustrated, man. I'm having such a bad night tonight. Oh, boy. I had a banner and it's gone, for crying out loud. Whatever. We'll just leave this up here. How did we get there? I said West Virginia didn't belong, blow big lead. We were going to talk more about this. You know, there are teams like, for instance, we talked about the Missouri Valley a couple of times. Drake played very well against Miami, which we'll talk about. Teams like Bradley, who had a great regular season, we should start considering these teams that finish either win their conference regular season tournament in these mid-majors and maybe lose in a conference tournament, or the teams that are second in those conferences that are very, very strong. Instead of taking, 9 teams from a mediocre Big Ten and 8 teams and mediocre teams like West Virginia, even Maryland, They end up getting blown out by Alabama in the second round. Alabama's looked very strong. The number one that I can say look at. Oh, Houston, I thought really came back and Sasser looked good. We'll talk more about that. San Diego State's a team to be careful of. They've got Alabama in this Sweet 16 matchup. San Diego State's played really good basketball, getting by Charleston, pulling away at the end as a close game, trailing part of the first half and early in the second half of that game, and then just blowing out Furman, who really surprised Virginia. One of the big disappointments, and Virginia does this every year. They did win the tournament a few years back against Texas Tech and Chris Beard, but mostly they've had early exits, first, second round under Tony Bennett. They were the first number one to get beat by a 16. We get that now two times in 3 seasons, 3 tournaments. But Virginia, with a 2-point lead, and again, this is where the inexperience and the mid-majors have a bit of a advantage because they have my granddaughter get a text, not from my granddaughter. She turned 6 months old today or yesterday. The text wasn't from her, to be clear. These mid-majors have experience, and the power conferences don't have kids that stick around 4 years as a rule. And you see that inexperience in pressure moments with this inbounds by Virginia with like 7 seconds left. They got a great trap on the guard in the corner. Furman did at their end of the court. The kid just heaves the ball over his head right to a Furman guy who makes a great up-court pass just to the 3-point line. The kid swishes it. Furman shocks Virginia. Terrible. Creighton over maybe a team that didn't deserve to be there, maybe NC State. Creighton's played well, beating Baylor, 3rd seed in the second round. Baylor was picked to win the Big East early in this preseason. They struggled a bit early on. They really started to get their legs under them later in the year, and it's starting to show now. And they're going to have a tough matchup with Princeton, looking to become the second 15 seed in a row to reach the Elite Eight. St. Peter's doing it last week, and Princeton did it by shocking Arizona. Again, I'm not shocked by these results anymore, though, and just beating up Missouri easily to get to the Sweet 16. The most disappointing team in this region, I'd have to say, is Arizona, obviously losing to Princeton, but Virginia is a very close second. And the surprise is Furman, and obviously the number one surprise is Princeton. But here you've got 3 teams in the Sweet 16 from the South, 5 seeds and below. It's very possible we get to the Final Four with no number one seeds. I've still taken Alabama to get out of this region. So we'll see how that goes. I lost my national champion with Marquette as we move down to, I want to get to your comments in a second. We're going to move to the East here quickly. We got a comment, at least a couple. We got Basement Bob is checking his book for copyright infringements. Tread carefully, Mr. Engel. Listen, oh my God, it's funny. The Basement Bob story will be the best. And that was football related. But I'm sure Basement Bob has written a book about how to better the NCAA tournament. We need to start rewarding some of these mid-major teams that are really good teams. I don't care anymore about quad 1 games or quad 2 games. They matter. Don't get me wrong. But strength of schedule is what, they got West Virginia on here in the how they got in the tournament, but they didn't win any of those games. Plus, who's scheduling Princeton? Who's scheduling Furman? Who's scheduling Fairleigh Dickinson? Who's scheduling Drake and Bradley to play 1-on-1s home and away? Nobody. Anyway, let's go to the East. Our Sweet 16 matchups there tomorrow night. 6:30 Eastern, Kansas State against Michigan State, who knocks out my pick to win it all, number 2 seed in Marquette. That game will be at 6:30 on TBS, by the way, tomorrow. And FAU against Tennessee. Tennessee's turned it on. Tennessee played very, very well after I buried them, and pretty much every pundit buried them with their late season swoon. They weren't able to even get the ball in the basket. But they played very well. This is another Sweet 16 matchups with nothing higher than a 3. Kansas State, the best ranked team here at 3. Michigan State's a 7. Tennessee's a 4. FAU, Florida Atlantic, for those of you wondering, is a 9. What do you got here, CA? I would have taken Tulane over West Virginia. I would have taken Tulane over North Carolina State. Maybe Maryland as well. Good call, CA. How do we get here in the East? Purdue, second number 1 in 3 years, or 3 tournaments anyway, to go out in the first round. Hang on, I got to get this turned off because this is going to be annoying for all of us, because once these texts start, they never stop. Pictures of my granddaughter, which I will love to see, by the way, but not right now. Purdue loses to Fairleigh Dickinson. Fairleigh Dickinson will lose in the second round to FAU. I really thought they'd have a chance to win this game, by the way. And it would have helped me in the survivor pool that I'm in, because it would have knocked about 78 people out. Still alive for about $6,200 there. I think there's about 80 of us left out of 300. To tell you, that shows you how bad things went. You got to pick one game a day, and you can only pick that team once, just like football. So Fairleigh Dickinson shocks the world. Just a lot of, listen, this was a fun game. You have to love the veteran tenacity of this team and their coach, Tobin Anderson, who now has gone to Iona, by the way, on a 5-year deal to replace Rick Pitino. That all happened very, very quickly. But their team has nothing to be ashamed of, losing in that second round to FAU. Great job by them. FAU gets there by beating Memphis. Duke just destroys Oral Robertson, really gets beat up in a mudslinging ball game against Tennessee, 65-52. Kentucky wins in the first round, gets beat up pretty good by Kansas State. Game was only 6 points, but it was closer than that. I see your comment there, Rick. We'll get to it in a second. I'll go to that region next. Michigan State beats up USC pretty good, as they should. And as always, Tom Izzo, this team has not looked great all year. They had some spurts early in the season. They were ranked fairly high, but really kind of fell down as the Big Ten season began. And as has happened many times, his teams are tournament ready. Very good chance for him to advance now into the Elite Eight, I think. Who's the most disappointing team in this bracket? Listen, everybody's going to jump on Purdue, but I thought Purdue would go out in the second round anyway. So I'm going to give you Memphis. Only an 8 seed, but Memphis was playing as good as anybody in the country heading into this tournament. And they just didn't show up. And then Marquette also, at least from my standpoint, I had them winning it all. And they go out and really got beat up really good. They tried to make this a game early in the second half, but Michigan State just pulled away. And Marquette did not have answers for Tom Izzo and that, better than expected Michigan State team. This is about this. I'll go back to your comment, Rick. I won't skip it, I promise. Purdue should not have been a 1 seed. I thought, by the way, Marquette should have been a 1 seed myself in this region. Purdue played very poorly down the stretch, and they did manage to come back and win the Big Ten tournament, which solidified the number 1 seed for them. But the overall Overall, I just don't think that the resume showed as a number one. Look, there's so much parity. Probably any of the top 10 or 12 teams in the country, you could say, deserve to be a number one seed. And the difference between 1 and 2 really doesn't mean that much, I don't think. Maybe they didn't want 2 from Texas as number ones. Who would you say? So you're saying, who was the other? Gosh, why can't I get this through my head? Oh, Houston and Texas. I got you. Maybe that's the case. We'll bring up Rick's comment now because we'll move over to the East right now, and then we'll look more at the Sweet 16 teams. But the teams that survive, and we'll play Friday as well. Am I in the right? Is this where I want to be? I want to go to the UConn. So we want to go to the West. So this will be Thursday as well. Gonzaga against UCLA, 2 against 3. This should be a great game. 9:45 on CBS on Thursday. And then you've got UConn, which Rick is bringing up here. Their center is a physical monster under the basket. This is a really good team, very well coached. Struggled in the first half against Iona, but then just really blew Iona. They were trailing at the half and really just kind of blew Iona off the court in the second half and beat a really good St. Mary's team up by 15 in round 2 to run into that matchup with Arkansas. Arkansas, a bit of a surprise. You guys, if you followed me last year, I love Eric Musselman. He needs to keep his shirt on, though, just an FYI. Arkansas had a tough year this year, injuries, some other issues, and I think they did a great job rebounding here with a 10-point win over Illinois. Very up and down, very big disappointment for this season, Illinois, and then beating the number 1 seed Arkansas beating number 1 seed Kansas in the second round to get to the Sweet 16. Great job there. The other 2 teams, Gonzaga beating Grand Canyon by 12. The game was never in doubt. And then beating a game TCU team coached by Jamie Dixon. They led a lot of this game, 84-81. And UCLA gets there. Listen, I thought this was going to be tougher for UCLA. The games weren't easy. I mean, they beat UNC Asheville pretty easy. They beat a really good Northwestern team. Chris Collins, you may be seeing him. I'm surprised he's been there as long as he has. He's a really good coach, and I'm surprised. I don't want to disparage Northwestern's program, but I'm surprised Chris Collins has not got a call for a bigger job yet. We'll talk about some coaching vacancies here tonight as well. So who's the big disappointment here? The big surprise, I think, is Arkansas. I thought I had them winning. I had them getting into the Sweet 16. And I think I had them. Yeah, I think I had them against UConn. So I do have Arkansas winning another game in my bracket. Brackets are busted like crazy everywhere. So, and I did have Gonzaga against UCLA, and I've got Gonzaga winning that game. We'll talk more about that. So the big disappointment here for me, Iona not showing up in the second half in Rick Pitino's last game with Iona is a bit of a surprise and a bit of a disappointment. VCU is a disappointment for me. Another one of the teams that were really hot coming into the country or coming into the tournament, one of the hottest teams in the country. They'd won 10 or 11 in a row hitting the tournament, and most of them by double digits and walking away with the A-10 tournament. And then they throw a stinker up against St. Mary's. Never really in the game. Kansas would also have to be a disappointment for the Kansas fans. I'm not surprised this happened. Kansas, kind of short. They do a lot of fouling. They aren't very tall. They don't defend the basket very well. And Arkansas did a great. They don't have big men. They aren't real great inside shooters, but they attacked the rim, and that's how they won this game. And Kansas had to do this without Bill Self. So obviously hurts a little bit or a lot. What do you got here? CA, they did they set it up so Houston and Texas meet before the Final Four. Yeah, let's jump up to that bracket. That'll be the East bracket. Our final, our Sweet 16, rather. And again, I don't know. Listen, I mean, it's a tough job for these guys. I don't know that they're certainly not beholden to put these two teams in separate brackets, right? They try to get really good matchups. Would it have been better for them to maybe leave Texas and Houston and give them a chance to meet in the Final Four? Maybe, maybe not. I think them with an Elite Eight matchup is certainly okay with me. I'm not going to get too wrapped up in that. We will have Houston against Miami on Friday at 7:30. You know me. Miami was ugly, by the way, the first half. Actually, they were ugly until 5 minutes left in this game against Drake. Drake was not deep, and it showed. They really ran out of gas at the end. They were throwing up a lot of air balls on three-pointers that they were burying most of the game. Miami finally got out of its own way and pulled away for a 7-point win. And then they really handled a good Indiana team exceptionally well, I thought, in round two to be able to get into the Sweet 16. And Houston, Houston won by 11 over Northern Kentucky. Sasser appeared to re-injure himself. But Sasser against Auburn's another team that just couldn't get out of its own way. Couldn't shoot the basketball, couldn't rebound. Houston played really well, but Auburn's just not that good. I don't know yet how good Houston is. I love this team during most of the regular season. I think they deserve that number one ranking of anybody. Most of all of the teams that got there and got those number one seeds. Kelvin Sampson has always been a good coach, and they did a great job. And Sasser against Auburn looked to be plenty healthy. So, I think this is probably they're going to be the favorite in this bracket for sure as we go forward. The other side of it, you got Xavier, who's playing really well against Texas. Excuse me again. Xavier just squeaks by Kennesaw State, but they beat up a pretty good Pitt team who's been playing really good basketball by 11 to get to the Sweet 16. Texas rolls over Colgate with a great regular season here in the East, but just not the same caliber of team as Texas, obviously. And they beat a game Penn State team 71-66. Jalen Pickett, I think, to me was a disappointment in this tournament. The former Siena player transferred to Penn State here a couple of seasons ago. He's carried his team most of the year. Played okay, but just didn't play well enough to get them over the top. Most disappointing team in this bracket? I'm going to say Iowa. They played horribly. Again, I thought this team, they played very well in the second half. Didn't play great in the Big Ten tournament. But I thought Fran McCafferty was going to be able to get out of the round of 32 this time. I had them getting into that Elite Eight against actually, I had them playing Arkansas. No, I had them playing it wouldn't have worked. It would have been Iowa. So they would have beaten Houston in the second round. That's what I had happening there. Surprising teams, because right now this is the most chalk, if you will, of all the regions. You got the 1 seed, the 2 seed, the 3 seed, and the 5 seed left, where you've got chaos in most of your region. This one's played pretty much, the way it should have, except for number 4 Indiana going out to Miami at number 5, but that's not certainly a crazy result. Got a happy nephew and on spring break from Fayetteville, Arkansas, I'm assuming. Can't really see what that is. By the way, that UConn team in the what is that? The West region. Local kid from Albany Academy and grew up in Amsterdam. Andre Jackson played pretty well for this UConn team. Listen, he's not a superstar, but he's the kind of player that every team needs. That kid is all over the floor. He's a dynamic defender, and he cleans up messes that get left behind by other guys. Anthony Price, good evening. Good to have you with us tonight. The TGI Sports Talk bracket. I don't know what your name was in there, Anthony. I couldn't pick it out. Tell me what your name is. I mean, everybody's right now. HF Steve 18 is leading the bracket. He's actually got the first three brackets leading. He filled out 4 before I changed before I could change the max you could put in. He's got 420, but there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 brackets left with the winner, with a chance to have a winner. Most of us don't have a winner left, so it's pretty ugly. And the brackets are like everywhere, Anthony. So I don't know who you are. You're AEP 19. I probably could have figured that one out. Where are you sitting, my friend? You're sitting in 8th place. 370 points, 50 behind the leaders. You still got your winner in there. So I'm going to say you're still alive for sure, as rocky as this whole thing has gone. Razorback, he is. CA's nephew's Razorback. Listen, I think, and we're going to talk about the Sweet 16 here in a second, I may take Arkansas. I may take them to the Final Four. We'll see how it goes. We're gonna talk Sweet 16 and Elite 8 here in a second. What do you got here, Rick? Rick's watched more games this year than last, and I'm thinking that some coaches were outclassed. Oh, definitely. There is no doubt. If you don't think Matt Painter was outcoached by Tobin Anderson, and Tobin Anderson, again, whether we believe him or not, I mean, he was a great story afterwards. He said he kept quiet about it because he didn't want bulletin board material, but he felt he says he wished he wanted to get matched up with Purdue in the first round, because he felt his team had what it took to beat them. And he told his team that. And they kept it quiet pretty much so that they didn't have, as I said, bulletin board material. But this team goes out and plays some great basketball. So you saw somebody outcoach there for sure. Tom Izzo, excuse me. Definitely outcoached Shaka Smart, who has had a great season, will be the coach of the year in most every a coaching award that's given out. But he was outcoached by Tom Izzo for sure in that Marquette-Michigan State matchup. I mean, you can certainly post some if you want to put them up there. At the same time, I think Tobin Anderson might have been outcoached by May at FAU in the second round as well. And Eric Musselman did a great job against Norm Roberts, who's filling in for Bill Self as well. I'm looking for some other ones that stand out. I thought Jim Larangara, while Miami really struggled, I thought Jim Larangara did a really good job keeping his team in that game against Drake and avoiding the upset, and then really taking it to Mike Woodson in Indiana. So I'll give him some credit as well. And, of course, the Princeton coach is out of this world. What do you got here? Purdue was way too passive. There's Carlos. That's we've talked about that before. Listen, Matt Painter comes up small, and Purdue come up small in this tournament all the time. All the time. So nothing new there. Some teams playing like they didn't belong in the tournament, because some didn't, by the way. And actually, some of the teams that played poorly did belong in the tournament. Again, the one bid tournaments, one bid leagues, I'll give those guys the benefit of doubts all the time. I'm not going to tell you Northern Kentucky doesn't belong, because they won their conference and they should be there. West Virginia and Maryland, even though they played each other in the first round, to me, both showed they didn't belong there. North Carolina State, I don't think belonged. I'd rather see, as I said earlier in the show, some of the second best teams in the smaller conferences get in, rather than watch these teams underperform all the time. Arizona and Purdue, obviously, they're going to get in a tournament. Who else really, those are my three big teams that I'd say don't belong. Who else can I pick out here? Anybody else? You guys can feel free to put up the ones you want. There's people that tell you Arkansas didn't belong, and they're in the Sweet 16, but I'm not one. Pitt was, one of the last teams in, had to play in the first four. They equated themselves okay, I thought. And then maybe, Auburn's another one. They did go out and beat Iowa, but those are two teams that were securely on the bubble and kind of played like it. That's horrible. However, most are this year. You shouldn't create the TGI. I shouldn't, or I should. Yeah, I didn't even know about a second play. I don't know. If there's still a chance to do it, I'll go look and see. Hurley brothers both did well. Listen, Bobby Hurley probably saved his job. There was a lot of talk about Bobby Hurley possibly coming back east to Providence because there was a chance he was going to lose his job with Arizona. And you'd have the Hurley brothers playing against each other twice a year, which would be a lot of fun. Danny, of course, at UConn. But Bobby Hurley, with his team winning 2 games, as it were, in the did he win 2 games or did he win 1 game? Well, he won the play-in game. I know that. Where is Arizona State? Yeah, they lost. They played really well against a really good TCU game and went out in the first round, not the play-in games, right? The first 4 is not the first round, of course. But Bobby Hurley probably saved his job. I would say, Carlos, and the brothers did do well. Listen, there aren't a lot of teams that have a lot of depth today. Again, I'm going to tell you something. One of the things that the transfer portal and NIL and the success of mid-majors has done is created much more parity in college basketball. And there's nobody that is all that deep. There's nobody, years ago, the Kentuckys, the North Carolinas, the Dukes of the world, their second 5 would go out and beat most teams. Nobody's got that type of depth anymore, and nobody's ever going to have it again. Willing games only get you so far. I have zero clue what that means, Carlos. You're going to have to. FDU and Z, a great example. I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. FDU, if you're talking, I don't know what that means. FDU is a great story. I'm not taking anything away from FDU because they go out and get beat in the second round by a really good Florida Atlantic team. They beat one of the better teams in the country that nobody gave a chance to win. Nobody. If you picked FDU in your bracket, God bless you. But it isn't. The best teams don't always win. The best coach teams and the leaders, the teams with experience and leadership have an advantage. The Princetons of the world show you that. The FAUs of the world show you that. Who else? Arkansas. Well, Arkansas is not a small school for sure, and Mark Few, by the way, most underrated coach in the country. Underrated, top 5 coach. Maybe better than that. Gets very little pub. FDUZ, I just don't. Carlos, what do you got going on? Are you just sitting with your boy Aaron Rodgers and on the peyote or what? Well, Carlos, look at the league FDU plays in. How are they going to have height and defensive? How are they going to have any advantage except the will to win against anybody from the Big Ten? Anybody. Not just the top teams. Anybody. Great strategy, forcing Eddie to step out of his comfort zone. Again, great coaching, understanding Purdue's poor guard play. Again, absolutely. Inexperienced guards couldn't get the ball inside to Eddie, and I know that's who you meant, I think. Rick, you might have spell check or something, I don't know. But they did. They got him off his spot, which is what you do. That's smart, great coaching. So great coaching does get you far. If you don't think getting to the second round as a 16 seed is getting you far, then remember, it's only happened 2 times in 104 chances now. So the second round is far for those teams, relatively speaking. CA, yep. Told my nephew Hogs have a great chance to, and they did. They played great. I had them getting to this. I had them getting one more. I have them in Elite 8, and I believe I had them losing there, and we'll see whether I change that as we look at these brackets here in a second. Yeah, Texas did blow out Kansas, and listen, not having Bill Self, one of the great coaches in the history of the game, doesn't help your team any for sure. Oh, I see. But look at what are these schools ever going to have? That's all they're ever going to have is heart and will. That's all FDU's ever going to have as an advantage over Purdue. More heart and more will to win a game. It worked against Purdue. FDU, and then FAU, Florida Atlantic, is a team that isn't always there. They got a lot to play for. They got pride. And they have better players. So, anyway, I get your point, Carlos, but listen, it is a wonderful achievement for a 16 to beat a 1. Whenever. Twice in 104 tries. My math is right. Oh, should have. I know. Unfortunately, I got this thing called a real job that gets me sidetracked sometimes. Carlos was in transit. Good, because you kind of lost me, Carlos. Carlos is Arkansas can't get over that hump. Well, we'll see. They're in Sweet 16. This is where they struggled 2 years ago, or last year even. They've had success with Eric Musselman in the tournament. Again, getting to the Sweet 16 is not lack of success. This is not a team that is historically a top 10 team, top 10 program. They've had their moments under Eddie Sutton and Nolan Richardson. Won national championships, went to back-to-back championships, won one with Nolan Richardson. But, getting Arkansas to the Sweet 16, and if they get over the hump into the Elite 8, it's a good team. Well, look, even FAU is a huge step up over FDU in the competition they play all year long. And again, you're not catching them by surprise anymore, right? You're not catching anybody by surprise. You just beat the number one team in the region. You're not catching anybody by surprise after that. Perth curse spelling, pronunciation, math, chewing gum and walking at the same time. There's a lot of it. CA's got his emojis working tonight for sure. Good thing their shots were falling. Well, oh my God. Carlos, why can't you just give FDU credit for a great upset win? Outcoach. If you don't think Tobin Anderson outcoached Matt Painter, I don't know what you're watching. Give FDU some credit. My God, was St. Peter's lucky all the way to get to the Elite 8? Has Princeton been lucky all the way as a 15 seed with a really good chance in my mind to get to the Sweet 16? I'm sorry, to the Elite 8? I don't know. I don't think you're giving them enough. Billy Tubbs hardly remembered. I don't know if you're making a joke there. Billy Tubbs, former coach at TCU and Oklahoma. Not sure where else, a few other places. He had a bad bicycle accident, I think, when he was a coach at Oklahoma, and had a head injury. So might be too soon. Might be too soon. But to me, everything's free game. Well, again, Carlos, once again, I have zero clue why you think FDU shouldn't be proud of their achievement here. You're telling me that they had a bad game plan. The only way they can beat these teams is exactly the way they played. And yes, that only works if the threes fall down. Coaching game plans are only as good as how the players execute it. And they executed it to perfection against Purdue. And almost against FAU. They didn't play nearly as well, but they had a team that was, I think, again, more willing and able to compete with them than the Purdue did. Sorry, Purdue's a dog, and they showed it. Matt Painter, great recruiter, not a great big-time college basketball coach. I mean, how many? I don't even know how many Elite Eights he's been to. And again, already, so again, you're going to diss every one of these teams, Carlos. I can't wait till Friday. Because I may pick Princeton here just so I can. There is zero reason to think Princeton can't compete with Creighton. After watching what they did to a decent Missouri team, and I would say that maybe they don't belong in the tournament either, but they were a 7 seed, so at least they were pretty close. And also, only the number 2 team in the region, and one of the top 10 teams in the country. So they've done nothing to warrant any respect in your mind, Carlos. That's amazing. Lots of coaches copied what. I see. Al, thank you. Lamar was the other school that I was trying to think of, and I almost said that because I think Mike Dean, who used to coach here at Siena, coached at Lamar. As he was Mike Dean went from Siena to Marquette, I think to Lamar, to Wagner. So, it's funny how you start down, you work your way up, and then you usually work your way down as a coach. But I believe Billy Tubbs was at Lamar before Oklahoma. Great coach, by the way. Great coach at Oklahoma. Let's take a quick look because I want to get into some coaching stuff too. We're going to make our predictions. I'm going to make my predictions. You guys can do whatever you want. Post up who you want. And you can post the winners in the Sweet 16. I'm going to go through and do the winners in the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 since it'll all happen this week. We will have a Final Four by Sunday evening. Let me pull up my bracket just to see who I actually still have alive. And come on, I can't get my bracket open here. There we go. All right. I had Alabama playing San Diego State here, and I got Alabama moving on, and I'm going to stay with that. This is the number one that is played to their resume. And Houston, maybe, I guess I'll give the benefit of the doubt as well. But I think Houston's going to go out against Miami. Just saying. And that's a bit of a heart bet, but we'll see. I'm going to take Alabama to continue to win, have them win Friday night, that is. And I'm going to take Princeton to beat Creighton. I'm going to take the 15 seed, 2 years in a row, the 15 seed will go to the Elite 8, but then they'll lose. Alabama will be your representative from the South in the men's bracket for 2023. So Alabama, Princeton are your winners on Friday. Alabama wins the South Regional on Sunday. What do we got here? I haven't seen that. Carlos, do me a favor and let's post that to TGI Sports Talk. Or post it to my personal page and I'll share it if you can't share it to TGI Sports Talk. I'd like to, I haven't read it yet, but if Rick is giving you credit, then I know you've done well. And the captain deserves it. At the top of the show, I did mention the passing of Willis Reed. Not only great player in the NBA with the Knicks, the heart and soul and leader of that team. Maybe not the best player on that team, but certainly the heart and soul of that team. Also, though, and I mentioned him on our college show because he was a great, great player at Grambling before the Knicks picked him in the first round. Moving on, let's see what else you got here. Trying to get to MSG at 9:30 for the UT game. There you go. With those games, that's right. Those games will be played at Madison Square Garden. The games I just mentioned will be played. I don't have the hate this bracket. Why don't you tell me where these games are being played? Anyway, let's move down to that Tennessee bracket. I've got, this is tough. I'll tell you. And the game's scheduled for 9, but it probably won't happen till 9:30 anyway, Carlos. In the 6:30 game in the East bracket, it's going to be Kansas State, Michigan State. I think this is a great matchup. I'm going to go with Tom Izzo's Michigan State Spartans to upset one more. Well, they didn't upset USC, but they certainly upset Marquette. One more upset for Kansas State. I'm sorry, for Michigan State. They're going to beat Kansas State here. And they'll get their way to the Elite Eight. And in Carlos's game, Florida Atlantic and Tennessee. It's a tough game. It's a 4-9. Tennessee, before last weekend, I would have said to you they were going out. I had them losing to Louisiana. Louisiana gave them a really good game. They only lost by 3. But then they played a really good defensive game against Duke. I'll take the Volunteers. I'm taking the Volunteers to the Final Four now. That was not my pick in this bracket, by the way. My bracket here is a mess. I had Memphis getting here to play Tennessee. Did I have them to play in Tennessee? I did have them play in Tennessee. Okay. But I had Memphis going to the Elite Eight against Marquette. So my real bracket's a mess. I will take Tennessee, Michigan State on Thursday night, and I'll take Tennessee to get to the Final Four. 2 SEC teams so far in the Final Four, the 1 seed and the 4 seed. Moving over to the West bracket, Arkansas and UConn. Rick, I know a lot of us have a soft spot for UConn because of Andre Jackson, and they played well. Danny Hurley's done a great job with his team, and they very well might win this game. I just think this is the year Eric Musselman gets this team into the Elite Eight and over the top, and they're going to beat UConn here. The 8 seed gets to the Elite Eight. And on the other side, I've got Gonzaga, the 3 seed, over the 2 seed UCLA. UCLA's done well to get here with their injuries. We all know about their injuries. Mitch Cronin's done a really good job, I think. So I think they're going to lose to Gonzaga, who I've tried to bury all year. But I'm going to have Gonzaga winning this game and then knocking out the Razorbacks in the Elite Eight to be your 3rd entry into the Final Four. And the 3rd region with a 3rd or lower seed getting in. No, sorry. When my show ends, I'll check it out. What show you got? I don't know what we're talking about here. When your show ends, I'll check it out. I don't know. Anyway, to the Midwest. You got Houston and Miami at 7:15. Houston's played pretty well. Houston's been one of the best teams. They're definitely one of the best teams in the country. Kelvin Sampson's done another great job. I love this way this team rebounds on the offensive boards. I love the way Sasser attacks the basket. If he's healthy, this will be a tough out for Miami, but I just think this is a Miami team that gets to the Elite Eight for the 2nd time. They aren't pretty. What they do isn't pretty. ACC Player of the Year, Wong, he has not played well in this tournament. Played much better against Indiana than he did against Drake, for sure. But I think Miami and Jim Larangara get it done and get to the Elite Eight. So the 5 seed makes it to the Elite Eight. And in the other part of the bracket, number 3 Xavier against number 2 Texas. This is a really good matchup. I'm going to stick with my original bracket. And again, while my bracket's blown up because I don't have a winner, I got a bunch of teams here in the Elite Eight. I do have UConn against Arkansas, and I've got Arkansas winning. I do have Gonzaga in there. In this half, I do have Miami playing Houston and Miami winning. I do have Xavier against Texas, and I have Texas winning. So that's the team. And I do have Texas then beating the game Hurricanes of Miami in the Elite Eight and getting to the Final Four. So 2 SEC teams, a soon-to-be SEC team, and Gonzaga in the Final Four. And then we'll talk more about those games once we get there. So that's my predictions. I'm sticking it. That is still, I've got one different team than what I actually predicted. So I've still got 3 teams in my Final Four alive: Alabama, Texas, and Gonzaga. And I had to repick the South. I'm sorry, the East region, where I've got now the Volunteers of Tennessee getting to the Final Four. Don't be shocked, though, guys. You know, you want something. I'm telling you right now. Don't be surprised if Princeton. I'm going to tell you something. If Princeton were in the East, I'd be picking Princeton to get to the Final Four. I really would. If they were playing amongst these teams, FAU, Tennessee, Kansas State, and Michigan State, I'd have Princeton getting to the Final Four. It's a really good team. This isn't a team with a fluky offense, backdoor cuts like Pete Carroll used to play. Can't do anything but make 3-pointers. Big part of their arsenal. But they play good team defense. They got a little more size than a team like FDU. Well coached, veterans, experienced. If they were in the East, I would have them with a chance to get there. What else we got here? I'm still not following Rick's comment here, but that's okay. So that's what we got going on, guys. What else is going on in the world of college basketball while we're on top? Let's talk some coaching moves this week. Rick Pitino, to nobody's surprise. Listen, I know we had some conversation about this last week, and there was some comments made that it wasn't a done deal. I didn't say it was, but I thought it was very unlikely Rick Pitino would go anywhere other than St. John's. If he went somewhere else, I thought it'd be Texas Tech. I never thought Georgetown was in play. But he makes the move on a 7-year deal, and he laid it out on the line. He said that St. John's, it's not if, it's when they get back to the big time. It's been a long time since St. John's has been relevant. They haven't won an NCAA tournament game in 20 plus years in the regular field. I think they might have won a first 4 game. This is a good hire by St. John's. Again, you know what you're getting. You're hiring a basketball coach, not a humanitarian, right? This is not one of the best people walking the face of the earth. Although he was exonerated of most of the things that he was charged with at Louisville. It wasn't him that was getting prostitutes for the kids. Now, if you want to talk about lack of institutional control, because of people running wild and getting those things done and kids getting paid, and, you know, it all comes back to the head coach at some point. And, you know, the price was paid. They vacated a national championship. Rick Pitino was ostracized for years before Iona did hire him. Providence did talk about hiring him before they hired Ed Cooley back when he was hired. And now he's left. and he'd already had a go around at Providence. But listen, Rick Pitino was up here when he got the job. Before he got the job at Iona, he was up here interviewing for the Siena job. He couldn't get back into the game. Coached in Europe. He's a great basketball coach. You can't take that away from him. Do I think? And again, you've got to know who you're getting today. You're not getting, Mother Teresa's on these sidelines. You want to win basketball games, then you have to sell a little bit of your soul to do it, I guess. I don't like that necessarily, but that's the name of the game. And, if you just take it from a basketball standpoint, Rick Pitino is one of the best. So that's one of the big stories. And then, of course, Tobin Anderson from FDU parlays that win to upgrade his job to the Iona job. Listen, FDU is an upgrade over, Iona is an upgrade over FDU, no matter how you look at it. And he did a great job. And he's a good coach. He actually, I believe, is a protege of the ex-Siena coach, Mitch Bonagero. Pretty sure that's he was on one of his staffs, and he's been around the block. This guy knows what he's doing. Carlos says Ricky P said most players not coming back. Well, no, I didn't say that. He already named, I think, Posh Alexander the captain of the team. So some of these guys will be back. But, yeah, look at it. It's a new coach, a new system. He's going to go out. You're going to see him you'll see him very active in the portal. He's told St. John's, when they were negotiating, that there's going to have to be NIL money available to use to get these kids in. Again, I'm sorry, but this is not the way the world should work of college sports, but it's a reality that we live in. So they're going to get involved in the portal and NIL, and you're going to see this team very active. And look at Rick Pitino's a good coach. St. John's will be in the mix in the Big East next year. They will be challenging for the Big East championship in 2 years, and they will be relevant on the national stage in at least within 3 years, in my mind. What about Chris Mullen? He coached, did a horrible job, and got fired. They did win a first four game, I believe, with Chris Mullen getting them to the tournament. His son lacks Ricky P's hair. You're talking about Richard Pitino. Actually, I haven't seen a recent picture. Richie Pitino's done a good job in New Mexico, by the way, getting that program turned around. They stumbled to the gate, but to the finish line. But he's done a really good job in New Mexico, and we'll see if he can continue that. He got off to a quick start at Minnesota too, and then kind of petered out. But we'll see whether that gets better. We talked about very surprising a lot of people, because Ed Cooley has done a great job at Providence. Providence hadn't been on the map really in a prominent way for probably 14 or 15 years before he got there. And he has done a great job turning them around, I think he's only missed 2 NCAA tournaments in the time that he's been there. They've won some games. They've been very good in the Big East, the new Big East, if you will. This is a good hire by Georgetown. Georgetown wants to turn around that mess. Ed Cooley's a really good person to do it. Now it becomes a question of where does Providence turn now? A lot of the I had a rumor mill here somewhere, but the coach at George Mason, his name is escaping me right now. What's his name? I think I got. He's a very young coach. I think he's like 34 years old. This is the way I think they'll go, because they're not going to go get some expensive coach. Have to go. If they were to bring in a big name coach, even a Bobby Hurley type, which are not now because Arizona's extended him. They're going to have to get into the $4 million range probably for a coach, and I don't think Providence is going to do that. I think they're probably going to go after Kim English. That's the guy's name. I think he's 34, 35 years old, done a great job at George Mason. They won 22 games, I think, this year, had a good year in the A10. A coach on the rise. I think that's where Providence probably goes here. And they could probably do worse than that. Listen, Ed Cooley did a great job there, and he'll be missed. And he caught a lot of people by surprise. There was a lot of people at Providence who thought Ed Cooley was never leaving this job. And he worked his way up to be one of the higher paid coaches in the Big East at over $3 million a year. So anyway, good job by him. Georgia Tech hired Damon Stoudemire, former Arizona star, played in the NBA for over a dozen years, I think 13. He was Rookie of the Year, I believe, with the Suns. He had coached at Pacific. He was recently an assistant in the NBA, and he gets the head coaching gig at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech had a good run in the 80s with Bobby Cremins, made it to a Final Four. We're in contention in the ACC and nationally for pretty much his entire run there. And as soon as he left, and Paul Hewitt, there's always a connection, right? Paul Hewitt, who had a great success at Siena and got them to a couple of NCAA tournaments, won a game anyway. Might have won 2 games. Got the job and had one good year. And then since then, that program has been in a toilet. So it's going to be that's a tough job, but the ACC is not what it used to be, and maybe Damon Stoudemire can get that turned around. South Florida looking for a coach after firing Brian Gregory. This week, the rumor is that Mike Bray, who stepped down at Notre Dame, as you know, after the worst year he's had there. He's a really good coach, done great things. I still have that up there. What was I going to say? Mike Bray, I don't think is ready to retire. I think he was getting out ahead of the posse a little bit. Again, Notre Dame's a tough place to win in basketball. And I think South Florida would be a good fit for him. I really do. Temple looking for a new coach after Aaron McKee, who was an alumni there, resigned this year. Temple's been down for a few years now after having great success for a few decades under John Chaney and then Fran Dunphy. They're looking for a new coach. Wichita State, Isaac Brown was fired this past week. They'll be looking for a new coach. They've had trouble since Greg Marshall got himself in a bunch of hot water there. Whether he should have been fired or not, I don't know, but we'll see. We talked about Georgia Tech. Notre Dame's looking for a coach. There's a good spot for somebody who's looking to move up. Watch out for Chris Collins at Notre Dame. I'm going to tell you right now. I got this feeling Chris Collins is going to be in the mix for this Notre Dame job. New Hampshire's open in the American East after Bill Harrion got fired. NGIT, Brian Kennedy resigned. In the Atlantic Sun, in the Atlantic Sun, Carlos's alma mater, Austin Peay, as we talked about last week, hires Corey Gibson to replace Nate James, who was fired. Texas, Rodney Terry has done such a good job since Chris Beard was fired. I do not know how Rodney Terry doesn't get this job. The rumors are still that Texas is going to chase a big name, a John Calipari. I don't know what other big name you want to put out there, but what does Rodney Terry got to do to keep this job? He's got a team. He's kept his team afloat under some very difficult circumstances, and he's done a really. Nobody could have stepped in there and done a better job. Not in my mind. and it's quite possible he's going to pull a not a Bill Frieder, but a Steve Fisher, who took over Michigan under different circumstances. Bill Frieder took the Arizona State job before the NCAA tournament, before the Big Ten tournament. And Michigan said, well, you're not sticking around. We'll fire you now. Or they didn't fire him. They said, you can leave now. And he did that. So maybe Rodney Terry does the same kind of thing, takes over midseason, takes his team to a national championship. It could happen. If this team wins another game, gets to the Elite Eight, and if this team gets to the Final Four like I think it will, I don't know how they don't bring Rodney Terry back. Texas Tech's got to find a new coach. Mark Adams, Rick Pitino's name was mentioned here. You'll hear some other names thrown about. It's a good job. Mark Adams had to resign after making some insensitive comments, because we offend everybody with everything. Again, I'm not defending what he said, but, does it reach a fireable offense? No, he resigned. Ed Cooley, as we said, is taking over Patrick Ewing. Interesting enough, it's notated here that he didn't resign. He wasn't fired. They parted ways. Rick Pitino, we said, is replacing Mike Anderson. Eric Pribble replacing Zach Kloss at Idaho. High Point will be looking for a new coach after Tubby Smith's son, Gigi, was fired. Phil Schumbert, not the former that's not his name. He was the interim coach at North Carolina A&T. They'll be looking for a new coach. Western Kentucky has Steve Lutz replacing Steve Stansberry. Sundance Wicks, what an interesting name. Sundance Wicks replaces Will Ryan at Green Bay. Iona, as we said, Tobin Anderson, off that big win against Purdue, leaves FDU to take the job at Iona and replace Rick Pitino, who left for St. John's. Manhattan has, of course, fired their coach earlier in the year. Rashawn Storrs is the interim. He will not be retained. Manhattan will be looking for a new coach. Todd Simon is a new coach at Bowling Green. Buffalo looking for a coach after Jim Weitzel's fired. Coppin State looking for a new coach. Fairleigh Dickinson promotes Jack Castleberry to replace Tobin Anderson, by the way, so they filled that job right away. American University looking for a new coach after Mike Brennan was fired. And I'll mention to you now, speaking of American, my interview with former American great Kermit Washington, one of only 7 players to average 20 points and 20 rebounds, will air tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Don't miss it. You talk about an interesting life of highs and lows. Kermit Washington has been through it, and the way he dealt with it is just, in my mind, a bit extraordinary. Army looking for a new coach. Jimmy Allen was fired. John Griffin gets the job at Bucknell. Holy Cross looking for a coach. California looking for a coach after Mark Fox was fired. That job will attract some attention. I'll tell you right now. Look for some of these Mountain West coaches. Coach Day at Florida Atlantic. He's going to be in play for some of these jobs that we've talked about. Stepping up like California, like Texas Tech, like Notre Dame. Watch out for names like Chris Collins, Coach Day. I'm trying to think of the coach at Boise State. It's another one to watch him moving, maybe west of California. Ole Miss hires Chris Bird to replace Kermit Davis. Coach, Dr. Tom Davis's son, Kermit Davis. And Dr. Tom is prominent in the story of Kermit Washington, who I'm interviewing, or I have interviewed, and that will air tomorrow night at 6. McNeese State hired Will Wade. We talked about that last week. Northwestern State looking to replace Corey Gibson, who went to, as we know, Austin Peay. Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Arkansas State hired Brian Hodgson to replace Mike Bellotto. Georgia Southern hires Charlie Henry. New Mexico State looking for a coach. Southern Utah looking for a coach. And UT Arlington hired Ken Turner. We'll keep our eye on all of these openings and what happens with these as we go forward. What other stories are going on? Well, speaking of the Irish, as I say, I think Chris Collins will get this job. It comes across the wires here just a little while ago that Notre Dame is finalizing a deal with Micah Shrewsbury, the Penn State coach, who's had a great run this year in the Big Ten, had a great run through the Big Ten tournament, losing to Purdue in the final, winning a game here in the NCAA tournament. And it looks like he will be the new coach of Notre Dame after leading the Lions to their first NCAA tournament appearance in 12 years. And they did win 5 of their last 6, as I said, before making that run in the Big Ten tournament. So great job. Congratulations to him. North Carolina's Armando Bacot will return for a 5th season with the Tar Heels. Ed Cooley, again, was talking today about his decision to move to Georgetown and try to return that program to its once storied place in NCAA basketball. Arizona's Krissa, the Pac-12 assist leader, after that disappointing loss in the first round of the NCAA tournament, will be entering the transfer portal. UCF freshman Taylor Hendricks declares for the NBA draft. That's a bit of a surprise for me. He did average 15 points and almost 7 rebounds a game this year. I'm not sure this kid is ready for the NBA, though. Rick Pitino feels he's earned the chance to coach St. John's. He's very happy to be there. We talked about Tobin Anderson. And I guess that's about it for now there. What's going on in college football? Take a quick look at the NCAA men. Anything men's football, like there's ladies football. Still got it out. Quarterback Newton throws at Auburn Pro Day. Cam Newton still trying to get back to the NFL. He's at Auburn's Pro Day. So very interesting there. Hello, Dan Harris. Good to have you stop in tonight. I am doing well, thank you. Hope you're doing okay. I saw your interview with Robert the other night. Great job. Dan Harris from Let's Talk Sports, obviously. Dan, I'll reach out to you. We got to talk about whether you'll be joining me for the Let's Talk New York Sports show on Friday. And Dan also was instrumental in getting this week's interview with Kermit Washington put together. That'll air tomorrow, as I said, at 6 on Let's Talk Sports and TGI Sports Talk. What else? I really don't feel like getting into that. What else do you want to talk about tonight, guys? You got anything you want to throw at me? How about the NIT? Does anybody care about the NIT? Anybody? Pat's backup Mark II. What? Pat's backup. Pat's backup Mark II. You lost me, Dan. This happens to me. My Perth education, I have trouble. If you don't spell it right out for me, I have a little bit of trouble. So don't take it personally. It happens a lot. Let's look at who's playing in the who's left in the NIT. Since we're talking a little bit about college basketball, let's go back and take a look at the schedule, shall we? Oh, Cam. No. We don't want Cam part 2. No. Thanks for looking out for us, though. Tonight in the NIT, I should go to the scoreboard because some of these games are probably got some scores. Wednesday, March 22nd. We don't want the NIT. We want the NIT. We have UAB and Vanderbilt tied at 37. This is the quarterfinals, by the way. Cincinnati will play Utah Valley later on today. That game's being played in Utah. And the Vanderbilt game's being played, I believe, at Vanderbilt. And then tomorrow, no, not tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? Come on, go to Thursday, would you? No games. Did they play last night? They must have. The other quarterfinal games, North Texas beat Oklahoma State 65-59. Wisconsin, surprisingly, some of these teams I told you before that are disappointed not getting NCAA don't do very well. They beat Oregon 61-58. And that's all the week got. So I don't know when the NIT will play again because they don't like to go up against the NCAA. So you may not see any more games until next week. Boy, when are they playing again? Tuesday? No, I don't know when they're playing again. They must. This has just got to be. They could play next Thursday and Friday probably. So the NIT, you've got again some decent teams, but who knows what'll happen. What time we got? 8:21. We're getting close to wrapping up. We might wrap up a few minutes early tonight. Again, great games this weekend, guys. I think the Sweet 16 is going to be as exciting as the first two rounds as far as potential upsets. As we talked about, I lost my bracket here. Let me pull it back up. I think, again, Alabama gets there. Just to recap, here's my final four. Alabama beats San Diego State. Princeton beats Creighton. Alabama to the Final Four. Tennessee beats FAU. Michigan State beats Kansas State. Tennessee beats Michigan State. Tennessee to the Final Four. Arkansas beats UConn. Gonzaga beats UCLA. Gonzaga beats Arkansas to the Final Four. Texas beats Xavier. Miami beats Houston. Texas beats Miami to the Final Four. Alabama, Tennessee, Gonzaga, and Texas. Your Final Four, which we will discuss next week right here on TGI Sports Talk's College Sports Huddle. Guys, it's been awesome having you all with me tonight again. As always, I appreciate your comments, CA, Rick, Anthony, Dan, anybody else who didn't comment, anybody who watches this later, please comment. If you got something quick, we're wrapping it up. I saw somebody pop in. If you have something you want to cover, we can do it. Otherwise, I'm going to say enjoy the games tomorrow night. Enjoy the games Friday. Head on my Final Four or go the other way, whatever turns out. Keith Dangle, TGI Sports Talk, to the College Sports Huddle. We'll catch you next week live at 7 p.m. Bye-bye.